The summer sun shone brightly over the quiet English town of Ashford. People filled the high street. Cafes were busy. Children laughed in the park, and buses rolled through clean streets lined with brick houses. For 16-year-old Ethan Carter, every morning began the same way. He unlocked his old blue bicycle. It wasn't expensive. The paint had faded. The chain squeaked whenever he pedaled uphill. But to Ethan, it was the most valuable thing he owned. His bicycle wasn't a toy. It was his future. Every weekday, Ethan rode nearly 6 miles to college. After classes, he cycled straight to a small grocery shop where he stacked shelves until evening. The wages helped pay rent for the tiny flat he shared with his mother. There wasn't much left after bills. Every pound mattered. Ethan never complained. His mother, Sarah, worked long hours at a bakery. She always smiled despite aching feet. "Things won't always be this hard," she often told him. Ethan believed her. Their tiny kitchen had peeling wallpaper, an old kettle that rattled whenever it boiled. Yet every breakfast felt warm because they had each other. Sarah always insisted Ethan eat the last slice of toast. "I'm not hungry," she'd say. Ethan knew she was lying. Still, he smiled and accepted it. His bicycle saved the money every day. No bus fares, no train tickets, just determination and sore legs. Without it, getting to college and work would become nearly impossible. Saturday mornings were Ethan's favorite. He volunteered at the local community center. He helped elderly neighbors carry shopping. He repaired broken chairs. He even taught younger children basic maths. People admired his kindness. Most never realized how little he actually had. One afternoon, Ethan finished work earlier than usual. The warm breeze carried the smell of fresh bread from nearby bakeries. Families strolled along the streets. Tourists stopped to admire old buildings. Everything seemed peaceful until he heard shouting. A crowd gathered outside a small pharmacy. Someone had collapsed. People stood around uncertainly. Some filmed with their phones. Others whispered. Very few moved. Ethan dropped his bicycle beside the pavement and pushed through the crowd. An elderly man lay on the ground. His face looked pale. His breathing was shallow. Beside him knelt a frightened woman. "Please help," she cried. "My husband needs an ambulance." Ethan immediately dialed emergency services. The operator instructed him to keep the man calm. Within moments, Ethan gently supported the stranger's head using his folded jacket. He spoke softly. "Sir, stay with us. You'll be all right." The elderly man slowly opened his eyes. "They said medicine." His voice barely came out. The frightened woman looked devastated. "He needs a special injection. The pharmacy doesn't have it. The nearest hospital pharmacy has one." The ambulance dispatcher confirmed it. The required medication wasn't available nearby. Someone needed to collect it immediately. Time mattered. The hospital pharmacy was several miles away. Traffic had become heavy because of roadworks. The ambulance would arrive soon, but without the medication, valuable minutes could be lost. The woman searched desperately through her handbag. "I don't have enough money for a taxi." She looked completely helpless. Ethan glanced at his bicycle, then back at the elderly man. Without another thought, he climbed onto it. "I'll get it." He pedaled faster than ever before. Cars crawled through traffic. Cyclists rang their bells. His legs burned. Sweat ran down his forehead. He ignored every ache. When he reached the hospital pharmacy, another problem appeared. The pharmacist shook his head. The medication cost £180. Ethan froze. That amount was unimaginable. "I don't have it," Ethan admitted quietly. The pharmacist looked sympathetic. "I'm sorry. We legally can't release it without payment." Ethan searched every pocket. £23. That was everything he had earned that week. Far from enough. Outside the hospital sat a second-hand sports shop. In its window hung used bicycles. A handwritten sign read, "We buy bicycles today." Ethan stared at his own bicycle. His heart sank. He walked inside. The shop owner examined it carefully. "It's old. The tires need replacing. I can offer £180. Exactly enough. Ethan hesitated. Without the bicycle, no transport, no easy way to college, no job, no income. He imagined his mother's face. He imagined missing work, missing classes, everything becoming harder. Then he remembered the elderly man's weak voice. His decision became simple. I'll sell it. The shop owner counted the notes. Ethan accepted the cash. For a moment, he looked back at the bicycle. Years of memories disappeared through that doorway. He returned immediately to the pharmacy. The pharmacist processed the payment. Within minutes, Ethan raced back towards town on foot, holding the medicine tightly. He ran as fast as he could. By the time he arrived, the ambulance crew had reached the scene. They thanked Ethan before administering the injection. Almost immediately, the elderly man's breathing steadied. Color slowly returned to his face. The relieved woman burst into tears. You saved him. Ethan smiled. I'm just glad I got here in time. The ambulance staff prepared to leave. Before climbing inside, the elderly man reached for Ethan's hand. His grip was weak but sincere. What is your name? Ethan. Ethan Carter. The man nodded slowly. I won't forget. Those were the last words before the ambulance doors closed. The crowd gradually dispersed. Life returned to normal. Only Ethan remained standing on the pavement. Then reality struck. His bicycle was gone. He began the long walk home, nearly 6 miles. The afternoon sun felt much hotter now. Every step reminded him of what he'd given up. When Ethan finally reached the flat, Sarah immediately noticed. Where's your bicycle? Ethan paused. Then he told her everything, every detail, from the collapsed stranger to the pharmacy to selling the bicycle. Silence filled the room. Sarah looked at him for several moments. Then she hugged him tightly. So many people spend their lives wondering whether they're good enough. You answer that question today. But now I can't get to work easily, Ethan admitted, and college will take forever. Sarah smiled gently. We'll figure something out. We always do. The following Monday became far more difficult. Ethan woke before sunrise. Instead of cycling 25 minutes, he walked nearly 2 hours to college. His shoes wore down quickly. By afternoon, his feet hurt. After classes, he walked another hour to the grocery shop, then another long journey home. His manager noticed. You look exhausted. Ethan laughed softly. Just traveling differently. Days became weeks. His routine grew harder. Still, he never regretted helping the stranger. Not once. Unknown to Ethan, the elderly man survived completely. His name was Arthur Whitmore. Most people simply knew him as a retired gentleman living in the countryside. That wasn't the full story. Not even close. Arthur quietly asked everyone involved one question. Who was the young man? He learned Ethan's full name, his college, his workplace, his family situation, not to reward him with money, but because something about the teenager stayed in his thoughts. Arthur couldn't forget the boy who had willingly given away his only transport to save someone he had never met. People often spoke about kindness. Very few sacrificed something truly valuable. Ethan had, without hesitation. Weeks passed. Life continued. Ethan struggled through each day. Yet every evening, he still smiled at his mother across their tiny dinner table. He believed kindness never needed repayment. Helping someone was enough. He had no idea that his greatest challenge and the most unexpected opportunity of his life was only just beginning. 3 weeks passed. Ethan's daily routine became even tougher. Every morning he left home before sunrise. He walked for nearly 2 hours to college. After lectures, he hurried to the grocery shop. When his shift ended, he faced another long walk home. His feet constantly ached. Still, he never complained. His classmates began noticing. You should get another bike, one of them suggested. Ethan simply smiled. I'll save up. He didn't explain why he no longer had one. He never wanted praise for what he had done. At the grocery shop, his manager, Mr. Davies, quietly watched Ethan arrive each afternoon. The teenager was always punctual despite the long journey. One evening he asked, How are you getting here these days? I walk. Every day. Ethan nodded. It's good exercise. Mr. Davies wasn't convinced, but Ethan's cheerful attitude left little room for questions. One Saturday afternoon, business was unusually busy. Customers filled every aisle. An elderly woman accidentally dropped several glass jars. Before anyone else reacted, Ethan rushed over. "It's all right. No one's hurt." He calmly cleaned the broken glass while reassuring the embarrassed customer. The woman thanked him repeatedly. "You remind me of my grandson." Ethan smiled. "I hope that's a good thing." She laughed. "It certainly is." Small moments like these followed Ethan everywhere. He never looked for attention. Helping people simply came naturally. Meanwhile, across town, Arthur Whitmore had fully recovered. Doctors called his survival remarkable. They believed the medicine arriving when it did had prevented serious complications. Arthur knew exactly who deserved the credit. From the outside, Arthur appeared to be an ordinary retired gentleman. Few people recognized his surname. Even fewer knew he had once built one of Britain's largest engineering companies. Whitmore Engineering supplied precision equipment across the UK and Europe. Years earlier, Arthur had stepped away from public life after handing daily operations to the company board. Most newspapers rarely mention him anymore. He preferred it that way. Yet, one question stayed in his mind. Who raises a teenager willing to give away his only means of transport for a complete stranger? Arthur wanted the answer. He instructed his personal assistant, "Emma, I don't want publicity. I don't want interviews. I simply want to understand who Ethan Carter really is." Emma agreed. Over the following weeks, she quietly gathered information. Nothing intrusive, only what anyone could learn by speaking with teachers, neighbors, and employers. The picture became surprisingly consistent. Everyone described Ethan using nearly identical words. Kind, reliable, honest, hardworking. His college tutor said, "If every student had Ethan's attitude, teaching would be easy." Mr. Davies described him differently. He notices problems before anyone asks. He treats customers like family. I've never once caught him cutting corners. Neighbors praise him, too. He carries shopping for Mrs. Wilson every Tuesday. He fixes children's bicycles for free. He even mows Mr. Thompson's lawn because his knees aren't strong enough anymore. Emma presented everything to Arthur. After reading every page, he quietly smiled, exactly as I expected. One sunny afternoon, Arthur decided to visit the grocery shop himself. He wore ordinary clothes. Nothing expensive. Nothing that attracted attention. Ethan was arranging fruit displays when Arthur entered. For a brief moment their eyes met. Ethan smiled politely. "Good afternoon. Can I help you find anything?" Arthur recognized him immediately, but Ethan didn't recognize Arthur. Everything had happened so quickly on that stressful afternoon outside the pharmacy. Arthur picked up a basket and wandered through the shop. He deliberately placed several awkward items on different shelves. Each time, Ethan politely returned them without showing irritation. At the checkout, Arthur intentionally handed over extra money. "You've given me too much," Ethan said. Arthur replied, "Keep the change." Ethan gently pushed the note back. "I can't. It's not mine." Arthur left the shop impressed. The reports had been correct. The boy's honesty wasn't an act. It was simply who he was. Later that week, Arthur invited Emma to his office. "I'd like to meet Ethan properly." Emma smiled. "I thought you'd say that." Instead of sending a formal invitation, Arthur chose something different. He wanted the meeting to happen naturally. A local community charity announced a weekend fair supporting young people entering higher education. Arthur had donated to the charity for years. This time he agreed to attend personally. The organizers asked Ethan to volunteer. He happily accepted. Saturday arrived with clear blue skies. Families filled the town square. Children played games. Musicians performed. Food stalls attracted long queues. The atmosphere felt joyful. Ethan spent the morning helping visitors find activities. He carried boxes, directed families, collected donations, never standing still. Around midday, an expensive classic car rolled into the square. People glanced towards it. Arthur stepped out. Several organizers hurried over to greet him. Only then did Ethan realize who he was. The elderly man smiled warmly. "Ethan?" Ethan looked surprised. "You remember my name?" "I could never forget it." For the first time, Ethan recognized Arthur's face. His eyes widened. "You're feeling much better. Thanks to you." Arthur shook Ethan's hand firmly. "I wanted to thank you properly." "There isn't any need. I'm just happy you're all right." Arthur studied him carefully. Most people would have mentioned selling the bicycle. Most people would have expected gratitude. Ethan never brought it up. Arthur asked, "Would you join me for lunch after the event?" Ethan hesitated. "I've got work this afternoon." Arthur smiled. Responsible. "I admire that." Instead, Arthur stayed at the fair. For several hours, he quietly observed Ethan. He watched Ethan comfort a crying child who had become separated from his parents. Within minutes, the family reunited. He watched Ethan help wheelchair users reach crowded areas. He watched Ethan carry heavy boxes for elderly volunteers. He watched Ethan refuse payment from one stall owner who offered money for his help. "I'm already volunteering." That's enough. Arthur became increasingly fascinated. Kindness seemed effortless for the young man. Before leaving, Arthur handed Ethan a business card. "If you ever need advice or simply wish to visit, my office door is open." Ethan accepted it politely. "Thank you, sir." Life continued. Another month passed. Then something unexpected happened. The grocery shop announced major financial problems. Online competition had reduced sales. Expenses had increased. Several positions would be eliminated. Employees gathered before opening. Mr. Davies looked heartbroken. "I've delayed this as long as possible, but we have no choice." Names were read aloud. Several workers lost their jobs. Then, Ethan Carter. Silence filled the room. "I'm so sorry," Mr. Davies said quietly. "If I could keep everyone, I would." Ethan forced a smile. "I understand." He packed his locker into one small backpack, a lunchbox, a notebook, one spare jumper. That was all. Before leaving, Mr. Davies stopped him. "You've been one of the best employees I've ever had. If anyone asks for a reference, I'll tell them exactly that." "Thank you. It means a lot." Walking home felt even longer that day. Without wages, paying bills would become difficult. His mother already worked overtime. He hated the thought of worrying her. That evening, Sarah noticed his expression. "What happened?" Ethan explained calmly. "They had to let people go." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We'll manage." "I know," he replied, "but I'd rather help." The following morning, Ethan started searching for work. He visited cafes, bookshops, warehouses, garden centers. Everywhere had the same answer: "We're not hiring." After hours of walking, Ethan sat on a park bench. For the first time in months, he felt uncertain. His eyes fell on the business card Arthur had given him weeks earlier. He had never planned to use it. He didn't want favors. But perhaps Arthur might simply know of a vacancy somewhere. Nothing more. After thinking for several minutes, Ethan stood. He carefully placed the card back into his wallet, then headed towards the city center. He wasn't looking for charity. He was looking for an opportunity to earn it. Little did he know, Arthur had already prepared something far greater than a simple job. And the real reason Arthur had been searching for Ethan had nothing to do with gratitude alone. It was connected to a promise Arthur had made decades earlier, a promise no one else knew existed. The following Monday morning, Ethan stood outside the impressive headquarters of Whitmore Engineering. The modern glass building reflected the bright summer sunshine. Employees hurried through the entrance carrying laptops and coffee cups. Luxury cars filled the car park. Ethan looked down at his worn trainers. He suddenly felt out of place. He almost turned around. "This isn't my world," he whispered to himself. Then he remembered his mother's words. Never be afraid of an honest opportunity. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The receptionist greeted him warmly. "Good morning. How may I help you?" Ethan handed over Arthur's business card. "I was invited to ask for advice if I ever needed it." The receptionist smiled immediately. "Mr. Whitmore has been expecting you." Ethan looked confused. "Expecting me?" She nodded. "Please follow me." Moments later, Ethan entered Arthur's office. Large windows overlooked the city. Shelves displayed engineering awards collected over many decades. Family photographs covered one wall. Unlike other executive offices, nothing felt flashy. Everything felt welcoming. Arthur stood and smiled. "I'm glad you came." "I wasn't sure I should," Ethan admitted. "I only wanted to ask whether you knew of any work." Arthur motioned for him to sit. "I know, and that's exactly why you're here." Tea arrived. Neither man rushed the conversation. Arthur preferred listening before speaking. "So," Arthur asked, "how have things been?" Ethan answered honestly. He explained losing his job, walking everywhere after selling his bicycle, trying to help his mother with rent, looking for employment. Not once did he complain. He simply described the facts. Arthur noticed something important. Ethan never blamed anyone. Not his employer. Not bad luck. Not life itself. When Ethan finished, Arthur leaned back. "I'd like to tell you a story." Ethan listened carefully. 50 years ago, Arthur began, "I was almost exactly your age. My father repaired machines in a small workshop. We barely earned enough to pay bills. I dreamed of becoming an engineer, but university seemed impossible. One afternoon, I broke down beside a country road. My old motorcycle refused to start. I had an interview that could change my future. I thought everything was over. Then an elderly mechanic appeared. He spent 2 hours fixing the engine. When I offered payment, he refused." Arthur smiled at the memory. He said, "Something I'll never forget. When life gives you the chance to lift someone else, don't charge them for it." That single act changed my life. I attended the interview. I got the apprenticeship. Eventually, I built my company. Arthur became quiet. I searched for that mechanic years later. I discovered he had already passed away. So I made myself a promise. If I ever met someone with that same generosity, I would invest in their future. Arthur looked directly at Ethan. "I've been waiting over 40 years. Silence filled the office. "I believe I finally found that person." Ethan didn't know what to say. Arthur continued, "I'm not interested in rewarding one good deed. I'm interested in supporting someone whose character remains the same every day." He opened a folder. Inside were letters. One from Ethan's college. One from Mr. Davies. One from community volunteers. None had been requested by Ethan. Arthur smiled. They all described the same young man. Someone who helps when nobody is watching. Ethan looked embarrassed. "I was only doing what anyone should do." Arthur chuckled. "I've lived long enough to know. Not everyone does." Arthur stood and walked toward the window. "My board believes our future depends entirely on technology." "I disagree. Our future depends on people we can trust." He turned back towards Ethan. "I have an offer. It isn't charity. It isn't a gift. It's an opportunity." Arthur handed him another folder. Inside was information about the Whitmore Future Leaders Program, a fully funded engineering scholarship, paid university tuition, accommodation support, a monthly living allowance, summer internships, guaranteed employment after graduation. Only one student was selected every 3 years. Ethan stared in disbelief. There must be students more qualified. Arthur smiled. "There are, but qualifications can be taught. Integrity cannot." Ethan slowly closed the folder. "I don't know if I deserve this." Arthur answered immediately. "That's one of the reasons you do." Before Ethan could respond, the office door opened. Several board members entered for a scheduled meeting. Arthur introduced Ethan. "This is Mr. Ethan Carter." One executive looked surprised. "The scholarship candidate?" Arthur nodded. Another director frowned. "With respect, we usually recruit from top universities." Arthur smiled calmly. "I know. And sometimes that's exactly the problem." The meeting began. Arthur unexpectedly invited Ethan to remain. For the next hour, he watched experienced executives discuss projects worth millions of pounds. Most focused entirely on numbers. One proposal involved closing a small manufacturing plant. According to spreadsheets, it would increase annual profits. Arthur suddenly asked Ethan, "What do you think?" The room became silent. Ethan looked nervous. "I don't really think I'm qualified." Arthur smiled. "Try." Ethan looked through the documents. He noticed something unusual. The report mentions 148 employees. Most have worked there over 15 years. If the factory closes, they'll lose more than jobs. They'll lose stability. He continued reading. But another page says the equipment there is older. What if upgrading the machinery costs less than closing the site? The executives exchanged glances. One director quickly checked the figures. After several calculations, he looked genuinely surprised. The upgrade would actually cost less over 5 years. Another executive nodded slowly. We completely overlooked that. Arthur smiled quietly. You look beyond today's profits. You looked at people. That's leadership. After the meeting, Arthur invited Ethan back into his office. I didn't know any of that. Ethan admitted. No, Arthur replied. You simply care enough to ask the right questions. Several weeks later, Ethan officially accepted the scholarship. The news completely shocked his mother. She cried tears of happiness. I always knew your kindness would matter. I just never imagined how. Arthur had one more surprise. He handed Ethan a small envelope. Inside were keys. Ethan looked confused. Arthur smiled. Come outside. Parked beside the entrance stood a modest second-hand bicycle. Not expensive, not flashy, just reliable. Arthur laughed. I tried buying you a new luxury model. Emma stopped me. She reminded me that's not who you are. Ethan ran his hand across the handlebars. It looked remarkably similar to the bicycle he had sold months earlier. Arthur said softly, I asked around. The shop owner who bought your old bicycle still had it. He refused to sell it. So I bought another one. Because your journey shouldn't begin with something extravagant. It should begin exactly where your last one ended. Ethan smiled through tears. Thank you. Arthur placed one hand on his shoulder. No, thank you. Months turned into years. Ethan excelled at university. He graduated with top honors in engineering and business. But unlike many graduates, he never forgot where he came from. After joining Whitmore Engineering, his first recommendation surprised everyone. He proposed creating a permanent apprenticeship program for young people from low-income families across the UK, not based solely on grades, but also on character. Arthur immediately approved it. Within 5 years, hundreds of students received opportunities they never thought possible. Small towns across Britain began producing talented engineers, designers, and innovators. Families found hope. Communities grew stronger. One sunny afternoon, Arthur officially retired. At the ceremony, he invited Ethan to the stage. Employees applauded for several minutes. Arthur spoke simply. Many people believe successful companies are built by brilliant ideas. They're wrong. They're built by trustworthy people. He smiled towards Ethan. The day this young man sold his bicycle, he believed he was saving one stranger. But he also protected the future of this company. The audience looked confused. Arthur continued, If Ethan hadn't reached the pharmacy in time, I wouldn't have survived. My planned succession changes. My charity, our apprenticeship program. None of it would have happened. One selfless decision changed thousands of lives. The audience rose to its feet. Their applause echoed throughout the hall. Years later, outside Whitmore Engineering stood a simple bronze sculpture. It wasn't of Arthur. It wasn't of a famous inventor. It showed a teenage boy standing beside an old bicycle. On the plaque were only a few words. True wealth begins with kindness given when no reward is expected. Every new apprentice stopped to read those words before entering the building. Many asked about the story. Veteran employees always smiled before answering. It all began with one ordinary boy and one old bicycle.